start. So welcome everyone. I'm Christina Gordon. I'm the CEO of the Women's Foundation of Boston and one of the co-founders. Thank you for joining us today. This is our 8th Women and Girls Empowerment Webinar series, which I'm excited to kick off. This will be recorded, as you probably all know. So the people who aren't here with us today or couldn't come, we will video record it for them and they can watch it later. I'm so thrilled to be moderating today's fascinating and really inspiring webinar, Women in Financial Services, starting, growing, and leading a conversation with women at JPMorgan. We're excited to have 4 amazing women from JPMorgan with us today. But first, for all of you there who are listening who are new to our organization, I just want to give you a brief description. The Women's Foundation of Boston basically economically empowers Greater Boston women and girls. And we do that through funding and creating really high impact leadership and economic programs in partnerships with nonprofits who solely serve women and girls. We were founded 5 years ago next week. Our anniversary actually is January 23rd. And we were founded in 2017 to fill the gap of the massive underinvestment in women and girls nationally as well as locally. When the founders discovered that only 1.9%, that's right, 1.9% of all U.S. philanthropic giving is directed towards women and girls serving nonprofits, and that 40% of those dollars are sent overseas. The co-founders were motivated based on these numbers to address the shocking philanthropic void. As businesswomen, we apply our investment and strategic lens to everything we do in creating and managing our organization and also to our granting. Our focus is exclusively on economic empowerment, which again is very intentional, because when you raise a woman's economic status, all of her life variables go up as well as for her children. Women also reinvest 90% of their incomes back into their families and communities. So there's a multiplier effect when we invest in women. And as businesswomen ourselves, we're really competent at evaluating the economic viabilities of projects and nonprofits. We've committed close to $3 million in grants to women and girls serving nonprofits since our inception. We have impacted over 10,000 women and girls in Greater Boston by empowering them to become financially independent agents of their own lives. We are a volunteer-led and run organization. We have over 120 high-powered women and men volunteering for us, and we continue to expand. So we also have, at the Women's Foundation of Boston, have a partner, Invest in Girls, whose mission is to usher in the first generation of financially literate girls and increasing the number of women working in finance. So we're excited that joining us from Invest in Girls is the Executive Director, Betsy Kelder, who will lead us in the Q&A at the end of the session. And now let's hear it from this amazing group of women from JPMorgan so they can share their experiences, their ideas, their knowledge about careers for women in financial services. JPMorgan Chase has 1,300 employees in the Boston area. It is growing both in their JPMorgan office and their Chase branches across New England. The company also has given $7 million in grants to support their 5-year Global Career Readiness Initiative, which is awesome, to improve access to innovative career pathways and early college for Boston Public School students. And now I'm going to pass it over to Lisa Corbis, and the panel will begin. Lisa?
Thank you so much, Christina. Happy New Year, all. On behalf of all of us from JPMorgan, I want to thank the Women's Foundation of Boston and Invest in Girls for hosting us today. And to all of you for joining us. As women in financial services based in the Boston area, we feel strongly about supporting Women's Foundation of Boston, Invest in Girls, and their missions. And, we are incredibly honored and very happy to be here today. As Christina mentioned, my name is Lisa Corbis. I'm an executive director at JPMorgan. My role is a sales and relationship manager for our security services business. And I've been at JPMorgan for about 13 years. And Beth, if you want to kind of take the next intro.
Yes, sure. Thank you. Thank you, Lisa, Christina, for that warm welcome, and Happy New Year to everyone as well. I have been in financial services all of my career, and I am a managing director advancing in our security services space, working with a number of different clients. My name is Beth Sullivan. I am a passionate advocate for mentoring and development, and I am so happy that you've taken the time to invest in yourself by listening to this Zoom call today.
Thanks so much, Beth, and I'll take it from there. I have been working in the financial industries as well for about 13 years, 8 of which were with JPMorgan, working in the alternative side. So happy to be here, and a warm welcome to all of you as well. My name is Catherine Kendrick.
Thanks, Catherine. My name's Robin Blanton. I have been working in the finance industry for 6 years. I am a hedge fund accounting analyst in the Boston office under security services, a role that I've been in for about 4 years now. And I'm very happy to be here. Thanks for having us.
Awesome. Thanks all. As you can see, our panel is made up of, women at sort of all different points in our careers. So, whether you're starting, growing, or leading, there should be something for everyone here today. And just before we get started into sort of our panel discussions, you may, sort of think about what is financial services. And I'm going to try to demystify that a little bit because I think it can mean a lot of different things. I think for most folks, the first thing that may come to mind are traders and investment bankers with finance majors that you might see on movies. But there really are a lot more things to financial services than just those, 2 examples. And I'll go through some additional sort of areas. We have retail banking, which, I'm sure you guys are all familiar with, where you have a checking account, an ATM card. There's also, private banking, which is for high net worth individuals that may have, incredibly complex needs for their financial services. There's commercial banking. So that could be, your local business or local chains that need banking and accounts. There's, asset and investment management where they manage and invest pools of money or funds. And then there's also, corporate and investment banking. That's serving the financial needs of large companies and institutional clients. That's actually where the 4 of us sit within JPMorgan, where larger institutional clients may bank, they may trade, but they also may use us for services such as what happens after the trade. That's, where we all sit within the security services business. I'm sure many of you may have brokerage, 401k, IRAs that invest in funds. Those funds and the manager of those funds require services that make the funds that you invest in work, live, breathe on a daily basis and report things to investors like yourself. And that's what we do. So for an example, I'm sure some of you, if you have, those accounts and invest in mutual funds, get this giant booklet at the end of the year that comes in the mail. And it tells you about the fund that you've invested in. And, we, along with other folks in the financial services industry, make that happen. You might not have read it, but it's an important part of the ecosystem. So you as investors have the relevant information about the investments, on a go-forward basis. And you may say, wow, I didn't know that business or those roles even existed. In reality, JPMorgan's more than just a bank or a financial services company. We're a large corporation. And all corporations need technologists. Even, our CEO has said, we're a technology first company. We have accountants, we have relationship managers, project managers, sales managers. And JPMorgan, to be honest, actually has nurses, doctors, and art curators. So there are really a lot of options out there, specifically like a firm like JPMorgan. There's, a lot of roles that you might not even know existed. So hopefully that demystified a little bit in terms of, financial services and JPMorgan. And you may ask yourself, how do I even get started in this large world? And I'm going to kick it over to Robin as a newer associate, just to tell us a little bit about what she considered when she was looking for a job after college and what ultimately brought you to JPMorgan.
Sure. Yeah. So I sort of dabbled around a little bit. I actually entered college as a psychology major because I wasn't sure what I wanted to major in and I had to declare something. I wanted to do like forensics and chemistry, and that didn't work out. But I was on an event planning team on my campus, and a number of the older members on the team worked for places like Coca-Cola and Goldman Sachs and all these big names. And I just really looked up to those girls, and they were all economics majors. And one day, one of them said to me, they said, "Oh, well, you should be in the economics club." And I joined the economics club, and I ended up liking it, declared the major, and graduated with an econ major. JPMorgan came to my campus and recruited heavily for internships. And I think I was just going down the line in the Career Center of all of the internships that I qualified to apply for. And JPMorgan was the one that I landed, and I've been here ever since.
Awesome, Robin. That's a very interesting journey. And hopefully, some folks in our audience can kind of relate of, thinking about various different options out there. What didn't you consider that you might consider now to be a factor?
I think work-life balance is a big thing in college. I had no idea that you could work from home, which sounds crazy now because everyone's working from home. But now when I'm old enough to, and I have the experience, that's definitely something that I look for, is the flexibility of, can I work from home if I need to, especially living in Boston, if there's a snowstorm and I can't commute. How is the technology set up? Am I able to get to my desk if I can't physically get to my desk? So that's a huge thing.
Yeah, and I think it's a good point. It's something that probably a lot of people haven't thought about until recently. And, the world has obviously changed a lot, and a lot of things have gone virtual, like this webinar, which is a great example. So thanks so much for that, Robin. And, just kind of kicking it over to Catherine, as, a manager level, what are the skill sets or majors that you might see as valuable as a hiring manager? What do you think is, specifically valuable entering financial services?
Yeah, certainly. Thanks for that, Lisa. So I do think, this is kind of a large topic, and I think I just want to touch base on what you mentioned in your intro and what also Robin mentioned now. For those of us who are joining that didn't major in finance, aren't currently working in the field, we have spoken about the fact that there's more than we are looking for than just financial knowledge, right? So that is one skill set that we're looking for. Another skill set, and I use this day to day, and I really try to encourage it with my team as well. There are other skills which include project management. So have you been a project manager? We are continually doing that, even at the individual level. Whether you were hired to be a project manager or not, you're going to end up using that skill set. I would say a lot of communication skills. So have you had experience in client service? I think that client service and managing a client is actually entirely different than managing people, right? I see those as two separate skill sets. So I do think, of course, there are majors that are finance specific, but also if you majored in mathematics, right? Obviously, we work in finance, we work with numbers all day. If you worked in the sciences, what were you doing? You were analyzing data. So if you enter the industry in financial services, you're just analyzing different sets of data, but it's transferable. Again, with technology, I could not do my job if I did not have programmers on the back end programming the software that I need to deliver for my clients. So, and sales, have you been in a sales role? So I think if anything comes out of this, it's not so much what major do I take, but to all of you who are listening in, my one thing that I want to say to you is, if you are interested in joining financial services or transitioning to a finance career, if you see a job opportunity out there that you want to go for it. you will not ever meet probably 100% of the job requirement. Okay. So, and whenever I interview people, I'm not saying like, oh, you missed this one item that I had on there as what I would love to have in someone in the role. So the key thing that I want you all to do is not to rule yourself out. Apply for the job, submit your application. You have hiring managers, let them get to know you, let them take a look at their resume. And if you don't fit the role according to what they are currently looking for, they can rule you out, but don't rule yourself out. We'd love to have you.
And Lisa, if I could just build on what Catherine just said there, you know, Christina's opening remarks about investing in girls and empowerment with the Women's Foundation of Boston. There's something there that Catherine said that for everyone that's listening, there is something in terms of statistics with girls and women where we feel like we have to be perfect and have all the skills to apply. So that is a critical piece that Catherine just said. Understand where you are in your career, and I'm sure we have folks on the call that are in a diverse background, just starting out. Maybe you're at midpoint in your career and you're thinking about a change, but look at all aspects of your role today and apply, because you have some skills. And learning agility is so important as a leader. So you will get there, but women have a tendency to not apply because they feel like they're not as qualified. So don't let that happen to you.
100%. Thanks, Beth. And I think that that's a top sort of point for women, Beth. I think it's perfect. And I think we talked about all the different options within financial services. And honestly, these organizations like JPMorgan, we're looking for diverse people and skill sets. And ultimately, we're really good places to grow. Like if you have a lot of sort of resources and different roles out there, where in a company that supports growing people, getting there and growing is sort of part of a career path, right? Your first job's never going to be your last job. It's sort of a step along a long, multi-decade career. So, you may ask yourself, like, how does one do that? How does one grow? How does one build skills and resume and network? I think personally for me, in terms of building a resume, I think it's, you learn new things, you push yourself outside your comfort zone. In my opinion, if you're uncomfortable, you're growing and you're learning, and that's a good thing. And as you, build your resume, as you go through your career, you shouldn't be afraid to take chances. As long as you are continually adding to, your toolbox is what I say, or your skill set, you're always moving forward. Even if, somebody says that that's a parallel move, like to me, it's like you've learned something going into a role. And that's a positive step forward in your career. In regards to, building a network, sometimes, again, you have to push yourself outside your comfort zone, willingness to put yourself out there to meet people, make connections. And, at times it can be awkward, but, it's the right thing to do. And sometimes you just got to do it. I'm not sure if the other panelists have anything to add or any thoughts in terms of, additional ways or their thoughts on building their skills and resume and network.
I would just add that it's in this remote environment, try to get yourself out there, join events like this. I know, you're talking to a panel, but take some trainings. You can network in that way if you're sitting at home. If you are joining a call with people, take that opportunity, put your camera on, put your face out there. If you have a phone book internally, I know I've been in my career, for a while now. I've been at JPMorgan for a while. I'll still see new faces come up, and I'll say, oh, that person that I always talk to, I want to touch base with them when I go to this event or when I get on this phone call. And I will actually go onto, either our internal site or an external site to find what they look like so I can go hunt them down. So just put yourself out there, join meetings, join calls, support initiatives, and you can network a lot in this remote environment.
The only thing I would add, Lisa, is, set some goals. It's the beginning of the year, right? So rah, rah. Everyone's out there in terms of goal setting, but achievable goals. And I'm sure folks on the call may or may not have heard about like SMART goals, specific, measurable, action oriented, have a time element to it. So spend the time just thinking about what you know, what you don't know, and what you want to know. And that enables you to create a learning plan for yourself. And just start small. Start small. Do one or two things that brings you some confidence in a subject or an area, if you're already working or you're soon to figure out your next class or your next career goal or personal goal. Just start small, but make those goals and make them measurable.
Thanks, Beth. Catherine, I'm going to ask you, as someone who has obviously grown in their career and managing a whole team of people, can you share some of like your sort of thoughts in terms of key success factors and biggest like influences or influencers in your professional life?
Yeah, certainly. So I would say the biggest thing for those of you who are starting out is to always ask why. You want to be conceptually understanding what it is that you're doing. And so if you're getting trained by somebody who can't tell you the why, maybe they just learned the process, that's fine. There are other people who can teach you the why. So just always ask the why. Make sure you conceptually understand what it is that you're doing. Once you understand, what you're doing and why, it's also great to think about, the broader picture. So we as a bank, as JPMorgan, I have to think about the teams that I deal with. If I change something in my process, how does it impact other people within the bank? Then also my client, if I change something, how are they using the data that I'm giving them? It has something changed with their needs on their end. And then finally, as you're asking your questions and you're taking a look at things, you understand the why, you understand how it impacts other teams, you understand how people are using what you're doing. It's also great to then, when you get higher up, always be asking yourself how you can improve what you're doing. So process improvements, obviously that has a business impact. But I would say always start with a why. We all start, even if you go to school, even if you have experience, you're always going to end up, I would say at some point in your career, where you're taking on something new and you don't understand everything. So always ask the why. Asking questions isn't a bad thing. In fact, when I get a new hire, I love it. And people will say, how is your new hire going? And I'll be like, great, they're asking a lot of questions. It shows me that you're tuned in, you want to understand, you're eager. And it also shows me that you're trying to connect the dots. And so I think questions are actually a great thing. The worst questions are just the ones that you don't ask. So certainly that I think is really the foundation. Building your conceptual knowledge is what's going to start the initial growth of your career.
Sorry, I was just going to say that piece you said, foundation, like laying that groundwork, and that's applicable to any job, like, things that you want to do in your life. Sorry, just wanted to add that piece.
No,
really important.
I think that's great. I think talking about to the audience that might be a little bit further on their career and thinking about making some changes. Again, if you have some conceptual knowledge, whether it's in finance, project management, people management, when you have that conceptual knowledge, you can take that with you. You're not always starting at the beginning. So a lack of conceptual knowledge looks like I run this report, I send it over to somebody, I make sure this number ties to that number. That's not conceptual knowledge. But if you actually know the why of what you're doing, you can always take that with you. So I think that then empowers you and makes you feel like you can, make a change, have some growth. And I think the biggest way that you're going to grow is by getting uncomfortable. So having the willingness to take on something that you don't know. I've certainly raised my hand for projects where, we needed to take part of the business up and, transfer it to the Boston office. And, it was with my bosses, and the conversation that I had with them was essentially, that I don't have any experience in this particular area. But it wasn't like I didn't know nothing. Again, I was able to draw on what I knew and apply it then to that project and lead it successfully. So knowing the why, working on your skills as we've talked about, but also then taking the opportunity to stretch yourself, make yourself uncomfortable. I know everybody says that if you're not uncomfortable, you're not growing. So continue, to take those risks. You have people around you who will support you. But certainly make sure that you're not always comfortable. And I think that also goes with networking as well, just to go back to that. If you're nervous talking to somebody and sparking up a conversation, great, then you're networking where you should be.
And I'm going to say something a little bit like, maybe this is a little bit unconventional, because I definitely agree with everything that Catherine had said, but I'm also going to say, like, a thing that has helped me grow in my career is actually saying no a couple of times. Like, I've said yes to a lot of things and learned and gotten uncomfortable. There's a couple of times where I've said no, where, I've had opportunities to make a change. And some of them early on in my career where it was, to move to another organization, and, it sounded like a great growth opportunity, but I decided to stay at an organization like JPMorgan. I thought the runway was bigger long-term. And I think that that's okay. We should sort of all go with our gut. I think most of the time, the answer is yes, learn, do different things and get uncomfortable. But I think we should also feel empowered to say no and make a decision of what is right for us as, individuals. I think that's a little bit maybe unconventional. But I know that early on in my career and looking back, it actually worked out okay for me.
And Lisa, part of that is you owning and driving your own plan, and for those listening, understanding the plan that you want. It's a very personal plan, right? Because we're all at different places in our life, personal and professional. So having reality to that learning process and where you are. So kudos to you to own the plan, but it's good, if it makes sense to say no, but you've done it, you've internalized the pros and cons on what's best for you in your personal growth. So you're owning it. That's a big part of a strong leader, is accountability in owning your own personal plan.
I think that's a good sort of segue to my next question, again, for Catherine as a manager, and, owning your career, as a manager, what kind of advice do you have for, folks on the line today about conversations you should have with your manager and driving your career, and what you should be discussing and how you should be managing that process?
Yeah, certainly. I would say for those of you starting out, I always just say, keep in mind that you want to drive your career. We just spoke about setting goals. Maybe in the beginning of your career, you're exploring a little bit, you're asking questions, you're attending events to learn more about what that career looks like for you. But I would say as a manager, I would think myself a bad manager if I expected you to want to be exactly like me, have the same exact strengths and weaknesses, and follow what I did to a T, right? So make sure that you're driving that conversation. I think that includes, first of all, if you do want to have a promotion, for those of you who are in the industry, make sure you're making that known so that you can say, what's the path to promotion? I think you should have really great conversations around that with your manager. And yes, sometimes that does include what you're weak at, right? But that's great, because if you know what you're weak at, you know what you need to change, and then you know what you need to focus on for growth. Again, with the leading your career, we just spoke about saying no. So that's one of those items that I think if you're having great conversations with your manager, part of that is letting them know, yes, where you want to go. So I had that happen to me as part of my growth. I mentioned to one of my managers that I was really interested in this item. Now, it didn't come to me the next day. Actually, something came up probably about a year later, but they were like, hey, we're launching this new group, and what you want to do, why don't we put you over there? So make sure that you're articulating where you want to go. Also make sure that if you feel hesitant or if you feel like you don't have strength in a certain area, you should probably also discuss that with your manager for your own growth opportunities. I don't ding my employees when they have areas that they want to work on. We are all growing. We all have things we need to work on. We are not experts at everything. And I actually consider that to be great self-awareness. And I'll say that, it's a great employee, they have great self-awareness. And what that just means is that I know that they're not just going to yes me. They're not just going to push things out and yes me if they have questions. Obviously, that's important in the financial industry if we have questions on our data and what conclusions we've come to. But what that means is that if I know your weaknesses and what you want to work on, I can slowly help to expose you to certain things, help you to grow. And I can also give you projects. I'm more likely to give you a project to run with if I know that you as an employee are going to take it as far as you can go, but when you've got questions, you're going to raise your hand. I'm going to be much more likely to give you that project than somebody that I know is just yesing me and never asked me a question, right? And I'm not getting the idea from that they're building on their conceptual knowledge. So I think you just want to drive the conversations with your manager. Essentially, it's being the CEO of your own career, right? So you're in control, you're driving it. That's your number one job is you owning your path and where you want to go. So drive the conversations with your managers. If your managers aren't talkers or if they're not giving you the feedback, remember that you have mentors. Talk to them about how they did what they wanted to do. Do a level up meeting. If you're working for a manager, the person above them also has perspective on what they consider to be assets and strengths and getting to the next level. So there's a lot of different ways that you can get information out of your managers, certainly, but go in with questions. And if your manager ever asked you, what would you like to work on this year? Make sure you have an answer. And if your manager isn't asking you, I would say make sure you tell them. And then I think same thing, transitioning, I guess, more to people as managers, right? Being a manager certainly is a skill set. And so I would say to all of you who are managers who are joining, make sure you're asking the questions. We always give our employees goals, but are we also asking them what they want to work on? Are we asking them what could we do to make them be most successful, in their role? And something that I've added recently, which is interesting, but I am interested in is, what could I improve on personally as your manager? What skill sets could I work on? So I think sometimes, we all need that feedback. I would rather have an employee tell me, I'm really trying to meet this goal, or I would like to go here, and have those conversations about their career versus me not knowing that there were things that they wanted to work on and them leaving me. So as managers, we do seek that feedback.
Robin, do you mind if I just ask your perspective as somebody, newer in their career, like owning, sort of being the CEO of your career? I like that term, Catherine. Do you agree with that sentiment? Do you feel like, empowered as somebody newer to drive that dialogue with your manager? And, is there any advice you might give to somebody newer in their careers in terms of doing that?
I do, yeah. So coming in as a college graduate, and this being my first job, I had no idea that was what you were supposed to do. I thought you came to work and your boss told you what to do and you did what your boss told you what to do, and that was the end of the day. And if you did a good job, you got promoted. that's not how it works. You have to make it known. Like Catherine said, you have to let them know that you want to be promoted. You have to lay out your goals in the beginning of the year. And then at the end of the year, come back with how you achieved your goals, or if you didn't achieve your goals, what you did achieve. Yeah, so that was brand new to me. And I was very shy coming out of college. So I didn't speak to my manager about my goals or anything the first couple of years at JPMorgan, and nothing happened. And then I came into this role and I said, okay, I'm going to try it. The worst thing that could happen is they'll say no. And things started to get better. I started to get a lot more responsibilities. I started to get put on more projects. And I started getting opportunities to really show out. So yeah, definitely take control of your career.
Yeah, and you're an associate and you're speaking on this panel. So definitely not shy anymore. I love it. And as all of you guys, think about having conversations with your manager and growing your career, you might then think about how do I take it to the next level? How do I become a manager, or, what is sort of the next step? In my view, I think being a leader doesn't necessarily mean you have to be a manager. I think you can lead those around you. I think qualities of a good leader are, communication, the ability to influence, actually leading people in the direction that you want to go, effective listening, strategic vision. And I think ultimately, you're often a leader before you become a manager, right? They're not going to put you in a manager position if you don't know how to lead. So I think, focusing on, leading those around you, your peers and your colleagues, is just a sort of natural evolution. And I think it's a good step to the next part of your career and potentially becoming a manager. And I want to pass it over to Beth as, our senior woman on the call, with, a ton of experience and who has been in the industry for a really long time. And I think, each of us on here know Beth as a leader in our organization. Beth, do you mind just sharing what does it mean to you to be a leader? I think it'd be great for the audience to hear your perspective on that.
Yeah, thank you, Lisa. You gave so many important traits that we all need as leaders. I worked at a company prior to JPMorgan, and they used the phrase, the shadow you cast, meaning you're always being watched. It could be on Zoom, it could be walking around the office. It's how you stand, how you engage, honest communication, being an authentic leader of truly leaning in and engaging with the employees. So Catherine, Robin, you said quite a bit of things, communication. As I progress in my career, I find it's just as important to share a vision as it is to listen and understand a perspective. So you grow that skill. Jamie Dimon, who we all report to and is a fabulous leader. If you watch him on a number of public communication, he talks about lifelong learning. And I mentor quite a bit internally at JPMorgan with the Women on the Move program, and I volunteer my time externally. And I realize I have so much to learn, right? So I've been in financial services all of my career. And some of the newer colleagues say, hey, geez, Beth, when will I learn all that? And I said, well, it's always changing. That's what's great about financial services. There's so much to learn. So being a leader is communication, listening, honesty, driving a vision, but being there for your team, being inclusive, right? Being inclusive with all about the diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. It's all about diversity of thought. On this call, we have all women, and hopefully the people listening in are from different age brackets, professional backgrounds. Robin, Catherine, Lisa, and I are all at different points of our career, but lifelong learning, motivating your team, being authentic is really what I value in leadership. And the day you walk in the door, you are a leader. Leader has nothing to do with a management title. It's how you inspire others to work. Up on the screen, we have Women on the Move here. And you can look at this externally if you're interested in learning more about our program and JPMorgan. But quite a bit already when Christina made the opening remarks about investing in girls and women-led business. We're very proud of that at JPMorgan. So one of our pillars is to invest in women-run businesses. Improve women's financial health is another thing that we do, and maybe we'll work with Women Foundation of Boston and Invest in Girls as well. We do financial literacy training at all ages, high school, college, for young adults starting out, what does it mean? So we teach people financial literacy training, and then empowering women's career. So a big part of my responsibility as a leader at JPMorgan is to work with Catherine, Robin, Lisa, help mentor and guide them in the career. We have development programs. Robin entered into JPMorgan in a development rotation program. We also have, depending upon where you are in your career, VP training. What does it mean to be get to be managing director? Catherine said, ask those questions of your manager so you know the skills that you require. So leadership is all those things. And on the screen, Women on the Move. So I just spent a little bit of reviewing that as well. Hopefully I covered the broad brush there of what does it mean to be a leader, at least to me.
With respect to time, I'd love to get to some questions. So I'd love to thank you all, this incredible group, for sharing their knowledge and expertise. And I'd like to open up to questions, which I think Betsy is going to field. Please use the raise hand feature. I don't know if we have that going, do we? Or I guess we do. I think we're opening it up. And you can ask questions live, put them in the chat box. And Betsy, I'll throw it out to you.
Great. Thanks so much, Christina. And ladies, thank you so much for all of your thoughts and ideas today on growing your career, entering your career, and leadership. It's been incredibly helpful, I think, for everyone. Beth, I want to start with you. You were talking about having a personal plan, and I love that framing of it, and really owning it. I'm curious, how's your plan evolved? I imagine you have a very different plan now, but talk about how you think about the evolution of your plan, because I think that's something really important when you're, in high school and college and young in your career. You sort of think you know exactly where you're going, and things change.
Yeah, change is to be expected, right? Robin, when she opened up, she talked about her major as a psychology major, and then she, connected to economics. When I started, oh my goodness, was I going to be a teacher? Was I going to be a nurse? What was I going to do? I started my career in a business management role, started in a banking industry, but I was looking for a company that had a development program so I could learn more, because I just didn't know. And that's okay if you just, don't know right away. It's starting. So that's how I started. That's how I chose my first job. And then throughout my career, I use an expression with my kids and family and folks that I mentor, like, be a sponge, listen and learn. There's so much to take in. Find someone that you admire and learn from them. What I did in the first part of my career, I stayed in a role a little bit too long. And I had a great sponsor that's in manager that said, you need to change. You need to learn something different. So I stayed with a company for a long part of my career, but I made sure I was always learning. I changed quite a bit. I listened to feedback. I took some risks. I'm a Boston girl. I moved to California for 5 years. I never thought I was going to move to California. I got an opportunity at a great company. I learned a ton. I was scared. I thought, oh my God, I know what I'm doing here. I can stay on the East Coast, family, friends, but I wanted to challenge myself. And that was the point that Catherine made earlier, is taking some risks. So just begin. Don't get paralyzed with beginning, is what I would say.
Oh, that's great advice. I like the framing of that as well. I want to make sure this is a great question in the chat, certainly speaks to the Invest in Girls work and mission. What can men in financial services do to support women in the industry? And how do you think the financial industry will change when more women are successful there? Which, if I do my job right, is certainly going to be the case soon.
Yeah, I mean, I will start, and I'll welcome my colleagues to say that part of my personal story is I'm a girl with all brothers too, right? So I was surrounded by men quite a bit, and they challenged me to grow and learn. What can men do to be supportive? I guess I would just say, work with people that are diverse than you. Men, women, different backgrounds, different age groups. Work with people that are different from you. Recognize you can learn from everyone. So just get involved. Don't be so nervous. With the state of the world today, without getting too philosophical, people are nervous to engage because of the different points of view of others. So I would just to say to my male colleagues is just get engaged. If you do things with positive intention, people shouldn't give you a hard time. So just get engaged and invest in people that are different than you.
Yeah, I think understanding yourself. I used to have a manager who would say, know your 6 o'clock, to sort of know what's behind you, know what you don't usually see, starts to let you see it. And I think that that's often the case, not just between men and women, but between people who sort of see things in really different ways, or have different backgrounds. So, and I can tell you from where I sit that we have some really phenomenal men who work in the finance industry who are so enthusiastic and supportive of the work that we're doing, because they do want that diversity of thought and voice. Lisa, Catherine, Robin, yeah, please go ahead.
So I was just going to say, as part of Women on the Move, we do have men as allies, where senior leader men are allies to women and what Women on the Move is trying to do, and really taking a stance in terms of supporting us and being present, right? Like, I think sometimes people hear, oh, there's a women's event and no men come, but I think part of, uplifting women and sort of understanding where they may be coming from, things like that, is being present. So I think, having those types of programs and men being involved and trying to sort of understand different people's perspective is really, really important. I will say in the last 13 years that I've been in the financial services industry, I will say, there has been a lot more focus. Each year it gets better, more men are involved. There's more programs out there to help women. It seems like it's an ongoing trend, not just at JPMorgan, who I think does a great job, but from what I hear broadly across the industry, our competitors, our clients, et cetera. And I think, I hope that this positive change continues. So I think, how do I think it'll change? I just think it'll keep progressing in this fashion. And, maybe we won't be having this women's panel in X amount of years. It'll just be a panel. I don't know.
Yeah. Robin, my next question's for you. I'm curious, when you entered the financial industry, what surprised you? What were you not expecting? And maybe think back to that internship, really those first experiences, but also, the first 3, 6, 12 months in the role.
What surprised me was the spirit of entrepreneurship that went on in the office. Like I said, I thought coming in that my boss would be over my shoulder telling me what to do every day, because that was what I grew up doing. I've been working since I was 14 years old. I went to work with my parents, and that's just what it was. But to come into the office and sometimes your manager's there, sometimes they're not there. I had managers that I never met before. So it was kind of like, just do whatever. And if it gets done, it gets done. And I'm wondering why I'm not getting work. You got to go out there and get it. You have to insert yourself in the situations. It's not going to come to you. You need to insert, especially if you're new, you need to make it happen. And then from there, people will consider you for other projects, but you really need to force yourself into there.
How do you think you get yourself seen at the beginning? What are, you mentioned that you didn't bring up to your managers at the beginning sort of what your aspirations were. So outside of that, what are some things that you look back on now and you're like, I missed that opportunity, or I wish I had done X, Y, and Z?
Yeah, so before I was in New York for 2 years for the development program, and then I transferred to Boston to get into hedge fund services. When I came to Boston, I met Catherine, who told me about the Analyst and Associates Council. And she said, hey, you should join this thing that we have a club for all the junior employees, and we throw events and networking, and you can get to know people. And I was just moving home for the first time since high school. I didn't have friends. I didn't know anyone anymore. So I went, and it really was a great tool to get to know everyone, because security services is huge. And to get to know everyone in security services, everyone on your level, and get to know what other people are doing on their day-to-day, because it is very diverse, was very helpful. And like Beth said, it's the shadow you cast, is you're constantly being seen. There are people who know my name that I didn't knew I existed, but they do because they've seen me at events, or they've seen me on panels or whatever. So yeah, just really inserting yourself in there, I think, helps.
Great. Christina, do we have time for one or two more? Okay. I'm curious, what are some, and Catherine, maybe you want to take this, what are some trainings or things that women and girls can be doing to advance themselves sort of on the side? Not all of us. Some of us have some time now because we're still not quite back to normal. Some of us worry that our children are going to appear on our doorstep from school for some reason. But what are some things that you think? You'd mentioned, being able to be a project manager. What are those other sort of softer skills that aren't, understanding finance, that you think people could work on to get to know, to sort of make themselves more appealing in this realm?
Yeah, certainly. I think with any skill set, I think first of all, if you know what your weaknesses are, the best thing to do is find someone that you look up to that you think is really great at it. And I think especially in this remote environment, you can get mentored and you can learn from people without meeting them. I challenge you to just think, hey, I just haven't met them yet, right? But I will. So we actually had a great event with Melody Hobson recently, which Robin helped to host. And just to give Robin credit there, somebody told me how great Robin was and that I introduced myself. So she earned me then recommending her for that role that she took on and has really run with it. But just, how important it is as you talk to different people, what leads your career. Melody Hobson in the event mentioned, she said, I've been mentored by people that I never met. She read books, right? And I think you can do the same exact thing here. You can attend events. Everybody who has gotten somewhere has people who have, led them, books maybe that they read that they might throw out in those events. So if you don't know where to start with, Googling somebody who is good at it, right? And listening to what they said, and seeing if they mention books, see if they mention people, then just follow them, right? The importance, as Beth talked about with your plan, is you have to start somewhere, and you do want to start that plan. So maybe your plan is like, I know nothing about this. I'm going to start listening to some people and some things and see where I can go. I would encourage all the women on the call. We have the link that we shared with you. There's a podcast on there. We're all busy. I love to put on a podcast. I can do my dishes, I can commute, I can put on a podcast, and then I'm making that time for learning. But again, as part of your plan, you have to own that. So don't make excuses. Find either listening, reading, whatever your media is, start somewhere, and it tends to naturally build itself once you start.
Great.
So,
And Betsy, I know we're at the last bit, and I think Christina was just going to jump in right there. The other thing I would say, just to anyone listening, it's normal to be nervous. It's normal to be nervous of asking that question or learning something or not feeling good enough. So if you're feeling that, that's okay. That means you're trying to improve yourself. So don't let being nervous prevent you from moving forward. And thank you very much for attending this event with us today.
ladies, thank you so much. I know the girls that I work with will find this a wonderful conversation, and it's really in such great alignment. So thanks so much for your work, both in advancing women and girls and participating today.
Well, thank you all for taking the time out of your busy day, because I know how busy you all are, for joining us and sharing your words of wisdom. Really, we so appreciate it. And so does the women and girls in our community. Speaking of which, before you go, please take a moment to complete our event survey. It will only take a minute. It will pop up when you leave the webinar. And lastly, in the chat box is the link to JPMorgan's Women on the Move page, as you saw, and also to our donation page, because we are a nonprofit and everything we do is run by our donors. So please consider supporting our important mission and that of Invest in Girls. So thank you all, and have a great week and Happy New Year. And thank you. You all were so inspirational. Really, thanks.
Great. Have a
Thank
good
you
day.
so much.
Thank you.
Hey, Haley. Hi, Haley.